What's up everybody, this is the 2023 Mercedes EQB 250. So for the 2023 model year here, we get this new base 250 trim that slots beneath the 300 and the 350 that debuted for the 2022 model year. No other changes really for 2023, but as far as the EQB in general, you can see it's based on the GLB of course, but they've smoothed out the front end there so that it gives it a better aerodynamic profile so you can get more range out of this battery. And so you do get like standard LED headlights up front there, which do have the blue accents, which is something you get here exclusive to the EQs. And you also have, the blocked off grille, and you also have the nice little light bar that connects the headlights and the grille as well. And overall, I think it looks pretty nice up front, but it certainly gives this more of a car-like profile than the regular GLB, which is a little blockier and a little more fitting with the rest of this boxy design. This almost looks a little too smooth compared to the rest of the vehicle in my opinion, but it certainly achieves the goal of helping the range to be a little bit better here for the EQB. And I still think it looks pretty nice and futuristic overall up front. Coming down to the sides, it'll look basically the same as any other GLB, aside from the more aerodynamic wheels and the little EQB badge you have here on the fender. Then going out to the back there, you do also have some pretty significant changes. You have brand new taillights with a bar that connects them in the middle, so it gives them a little bit more of a futuristic look once again over the GLB. You also have a unique rear bumper, which of course gets rid of any kind of exhaust tips or anything like that, and it's all smoothed out there for a better aerodynamic profile once again. You also have a little bit of a roof spoiler as well. And so overall, I think it's gonna come down to personal preference. I personally think I still prefer the GLB looks a little bit, but I think this still looks really nice, and overall still a really cool, unique little vehicle. Having the boxy shape, the big glass windows and all that. It certainly is unique, especially as far as electric cars go these days. But let's start up and go for a drive. The EQB here has a standard Mercedes key, just a nice bit of metal on it, not too thick, and a really nice key overall. And so one interesting thing though is Mercedes still makes you pay for keyless access. So you of course have the buttons, but if you want to have the proximity key, that is part of an extra package. This one does have that package too. And this one, as equipped, you can leave the key in your pocket, and then they all do come with a standard push button start. So you just leave the key in your pocket, hit the engine start button, and it turns right on. And if you're curious to hear about the interior in the EQB, my wife and I just did a full in-depth interior review on this vehicle, so I'll link that at the end of this video so you can go watch that once this one's over if you want to hear all the details on this interior. But overall, if you're familiar with a GLB interior, this is basically identical, aside from a few different graphics there in the gauge cluster, because of course this is electric. But really there's no unique touches here, at least for the EQB 250. I know some of the higher trims have rose gold accents and stuff. None of that in here. This is totally standard GLB as far as the interior goes. All right, so setting off here in the EQB 250. So the first thing you notice, well, if you're not familiar with electric vehicles, the first thing you'll notice is just that it's totally silent in here, of course. No engine, so it gives you a much more luxurious ride in that regard because it's just total silence. You do every once in a while hear some flowing water and a couple little electrical things here running in the background, but overall mostly just silent. Other things you'll notice, so you have excellent visibility, same as a GLB, where you have these massive windows, as far as the windshield, the side windows, everything is very easy to see out of view. Out of the back is great. Now this one just has a regular backup camera. There's no 360 camera. You have to go up to higher trims for that. This is basically a base trim. This one has a sticker price of about $56,000 and has like $2,000 in options. So this is like a rare look at basically a base model Mercedes EQB. But so it doesn't have very many options on it, and so but you can get a bunch of extra tech and driver assistance packages if you want to have all kinds of stuff. But you do have like blind spot monitoring here as standard, automatic emergency braking, all those types of things, of course. Speaking of braking though, that is one of my minor gripes. I've already been driving this vehicle for a week now, and the brake pedal is not consistent. Now it's vague sometimes, so it's not like it's you don't get enough braking power, but it's just that trying to be smooth with it can sometimes be a little tricky, because sometimes it wants to grab a little quicker than other times, and other times I'm like pushing it way further to get the same braking action. So it's just inconsistent, which you should never have in a brake pedal, and most other electric vehicles aren't inconsistent. There's some hybrids that are a little wonky sometimes, but I've never had a brake pedal be this inconsistent in a while. It's been a long time since I've had a brake pedal like this. Don't love that. Another thing I don't love is that whenever you start out in this vehicle, so there's 3 different regen modes for the electric motor here. So there's regular drive, which they claim is like a typical engine braking, but it's only like a normal driving experience if you're used to driving a manual transmission where it really slows you down when you get off the gas. Basically, if you want to have it feel like a normal automatic transmission vehicle, you have to pull the paddle once every single time you get in this vehicle to go up to D+ mode, and then that allows you to do the normal amount of coasting, which also still does do some regen and feels to me more closely to like what you're expecting out of a normal automatic transmission crossover. There's also a D- mode, which is close to a one pedal mode where you just basically, it does most of the braking for you as you let off of the gas pedal, but it doesn't come to a full and complete stop. So, you know, for that last 5 mph, you still got to go over onto the brake pedal in order to actually come to a complete stop. So I wish they did a true one pedal thing, but unfortunately it's just those 3 drive modes as far as the regen goes, and that's it. But aside from those minor gripes, it really is a nice driver. I mean, you have instant response here, of course, not having any kind of transmission, which is one of my complaints with the regular GLBs with their dual clutch. This, you know, there's no weirdness with the transmission because there's no transmission. It's a 1-speed, so makes it nice and simple as far as that goes. But I'm going to go ahead and put it up into the sport driving mode, which it does have individual, sport, comfort, and eco. But I'm going to put it into the sport mode here, and let's turn down onto this back road and see how it does. Here we go. So it instantly goes to 100% power. And, you know, it scoots okay just because it's electric. So thankfully, you know, it has instant power from the second you put your foot down. And so it will push you back in the back of your seat. And I'd say it certainly feels faster than a regular base GLB, at least at low speeds. And the sport mode definitely, you know, makes it ramp up that power a little bit faster there, which is appreciated. But these are not quick. So the EQB 250 is front wheel drive only and has just a single motor. So it's going to be the slowest out of the 3 versions of the EQB here. So you have 188 horsepower, 284 pound-feet of torque, and it gives you about an 8 second 0 to 60 time, they're claiming. But the exchange is that you get the best range out of all the EQBs, at 245 miles of range is what this is rated at. But you don't give up much range because the EQB 300, which has a few dozen more horsepower, that one only has like 2 or 3 less miles of range, and with that you have a 1 second faster 0 to 60, goes down to a 7 second. The top EQB 350 will have a 6 second 0 to 60, so that'd be the quickest one. You know, but an 8 second 0 to 60 though is totally fine. That's, you know, the average amount of acceleration you get out of any regular ordinary crossover these days. So, you know, it's not like it's abnormally slow or anything. And especially if you're someone who doesn't need all-wheel drive and all-weather capability, I'd certainly say there's nothing wrong with going with the 250 version here because it's plenty of power. I don't think anyone's going to really complain too much. It just kind of runs out of steam in those higher speeds where it kind of slows down a little bit. But I think honestly that 8 second 0 to 60 time is conservative. I feel like it feels faster than that to me. But other things to note here, so we're on this little bit of a rougher road that sometimes generates some road noise. And in this vehicle though, you know, it's actually pretty nice and quiet. I think the battery pack certainly helps to dampen some of that road noise a little bit. And it's also pretty smooth too. I'll elaborate a little bit more as we're coming up some corners here. We'll see how it handles. And so, you know, one of the things here about the EQBs, even this front wheel drive single motor one, is that they are heavy. This weighs about 4,700 pounds, if you can believe it. It's several hundred pounds heavier than a regular GLB. I mean, it's way heavier than a regular GLB. So it doesn't feel as light in corners as the GLB, but I will say that it certainly still handles very well. I think, you know, the fact you have the low center of gravity with this, you know, big battery pack really helps, and just the way that they set it up, you know, it just feels very flat, very confident. And I've actually really enjoyed, you know, taking it around my back roads this week. It's been a really nice thing to drive. The steering is really nicely weighted. In sport mode here, it's even a little bit weightier, but it was very precise, just felt really good and substantial. And so one other thing though is, you know, as we're exiting this corner here now, you have a certain amount of wheel spin from those front wheels every once in a while. I've felt a few times over the past week here where the wheel was fighting me a little bit, and I could tell that, you know, it wanted to try and spin those wheels a little more. And so it's just part of the nature of having this much power going through the front wheels. 284 pound-feet of torque is a lot to ask from front tires, especially ones like these that are only, you know, standard 235 wide crossover tires. Nothing sporty, nothing super grippy. That's partially intentional because they want to give you, you know, the better range. So it's just, something you're going to have to, just recognize, especially if you're driving in rainy circumstances or, low grip situations. You're going to have a little less grip here. So you're going to want to make sure you go for the all-wheel drive versions. If you do want to make sure you can put the power down all the time, because it's been kind of funny sometimes just how, it's tugging at the wheel and, got a little bit of torque steer going on, because it's just putting all of that power through the front there. And it's almost feels like a fun hot hatch that's just really tall in certain ways. But I am really impressed with just how refined it really feels in here. There's no squeaks or rattles, at least yet. There's no extra noise really, and this is actually a really windy day, and even the wind noise is very subdued. The road noise, like I said, is nice and quiet. It definitely feels luxurious. But as far as the battery goes here in the EQBs, so here in America at least, they all get the same 70.5 kilowatt hour battery, and here in the EQB 250, like I mentioned, it does 245 miles of range, and that's a good amount of range, especially compared to a lot of the competitors. Some do a little more, some do a little bit less, but a good amount of range for sure. The only problem is road tripping is not going to be great, because this charges at a slower rate than most of the other competitors. So this only charges at 100 kilowatts max, because it's built on the older 400 volt architecture, not the brand newest, most impressive EQ platform, which is an 800 volt architecture. So it's really going to be pretty slow with the charging. I think they're quoting a 10% to 80% charge in 32 minutes under ideal conditions. So that's a good bit slower. I mean, even some of the less impressive stuff as far as charging goes, like the Volvo XC40 Recharge, even that still charges 150 kilowatts. So, this is 2/3 of that, as far as charge speed goes. So that's the one real downside here of the EQB, is the charging. So I would say, as far as luxury crossovers goes in the electric segment here, this would be one of my last picks as far as road tripping. I think the only other one that's going to be the same slow charge rate as this is potentially the Lexus RZ that's coming here. I believe that does the same slower charge rate of 100 kilowatt. But anyway, yeah, that's the only thing that's pretty underwhelming. So I would say, unless you're not in a hurry on your road trip, you're certainly going to want to make sure that this is mostly just for around town driving. But I mean, having that nice big battery is certainly appreciated. And of course, as long as you can charge at home or at work, it's not going to matter as far as the charge speed goes. It'll be totally fine, and charge just as fast as anything else on a level 2 charger. And so it's going to be totally fine for that average use case scenario. It's just the road tripping where this will kind of let you down a little bit compared to some of the others. And I'm out here on the highway in the EQB, and it's a really nice highway cruiser still. Obviously, you're going to have a little bit more road noise just because it's a little bit smaller and not quite as luxurious as some of the bigger Mercedes models. By the way, there's a nice E63S passing us there. But as far as the other stuff with the highway driving here for the EQB, unfortunately, again, since this is pretty much a base model that I'm driving here, there's no adaptive cruise control, which is still kind of crazy. For the 2023 model year, we still have no standard adaptive cruise. That's something you get as standard in a Toyota Corolla. A base Toyota Corolla gives you adaptive cruise these days. Why they're still nickel and diming you for it in a $50,000 plus Mercedes is kind of a mystery to me. But we just have standard cruise control here, and that's all you got. And so a little underwhelming. There's no steering assist or anything like that. Again, that is all optional and available if you want it. And I guess it keeps the price down if you don't care about those things, but everyone else keeps the price competitive while bundling all that stuff in for free. So just one little observation there to point out. But otherwise, still a totally fine highway cruiser. But the last two things I mentioned here about the EQB are the efficiency that I got over my week of driving here, and the pricing and how it compares to its competition. So as far as efficiency goes, I've been getting an average of 2.8 miles per kilowatt hour. Now, I'm filming this review here in a unseasonably warm February, but still February here in the Northeast, and so that's going to certainly drag that down. Of course, you get lower range out of your battery and less battery efficiency in the cold. So that is a given, totally expected. And I'd say that for a single motor vehicle, that's a little underwhelming, but still not too bad. I'd say the efficiency is pretty good. These are rated, by the way, at 105 mpge combined, just to give you kind of some perspective on that efficiency as far as how it's officially rated. And so I think, again, especially considering how boxy this is and how unaerodynamic it actually is, really, and the fact that it wasn't a purpose-built EV, it was, a GLB converted for the electric thing, I think it's still commendable with the efficiency you get out of this thing. And then the last thing to mention, though, is the pricing and how it compares to its competitors, which isn't quite as impressive, unfortunately, in my opinion. Now, I will say, if you are okay with a bare bones model, much like this one, then you might actually be able to undercut some of the other competitors, because some of the competitors do start more expensive than this, at least as far as the luxury competitors from the luxury brands. These start, including destination, at around $54,000, and this one, as tested, is just under $57,000. But at that $57,000 price point, I have no heated seats, I have no cooled seats, I have no heated steering wheel, no adaptive cruise, like none of that stuff. So if you load one of these things up to have the amount of options and the kind of options you're expecting out of a luxury crossover, these are going to be much more expensive. Thankfully, the heated seats and stuff are very cheap. That's like $500 for heated seats. I'm not sure why this press car doesn't have it equipped, but you just have to make sure that you're ticking the right boxes, and if you're shopping the ones that are on the lot, make sure that it has the options, because you can't assume that anything is standard in these, because they still nickel and dime you with every option if you want to have something that actually has what you're expecting out of a Mercedes SUV that's $50-some thousand. So just keep that in mind in general. Now, as far as the competitors go, most of them, like I said, do start a little bit more expensive, but they also give you more for your money. So, for example, the closest competitor, I think, is the Volvo XC40 Recharge. It's very close in its size, and it's also close in the fact that it was developed the same way, where they developed the gas version first and then converted it for the electric thing. And the XC40 I really like. Now, the interior isn't as nice, but what you get for about $55,000 is all-wheel drive and 400 horsepower as standard, which you just blow the doors off this thing. I think those have like a mid 4 seconds to 60 time. I mean, it is a rocket ship compared to this. And if you're not an enthusiast, that's not going to matter. But one thing that might matter is the fact that the Volvo does charge, like I said, faster. And so if you're on a road trip, I would certainly go for the Volvo for that reason as well, in addition to the extra power and the fact that all-wheel drive is bundled in, versus in these, there's no way to get all-wheel drive with the EQB 250, by the way. You have to go up to the EQB 300 with extra power in order to get that all-wheel drive and the lower range and all that. So, I mean, the Volvo does do a slight bit less range, but they're very, very close as far as range goes. And so personally, I just think, if you don't need to have the super nice interior that you get here in the EQB, I think the Volvo is still a nice place to be, just not quite as nice as this. But I think if you're willing to compromise there a little bit, the Volvo is probably the better value as far as the mechanical stuff goes, the charging and all of that. Another very strong competitor that I just experienced last year was the Genesis GV60. Now, the GV60 is a little more coupey and not quite as boxy or as practical as the EQB, I'll admit, but the GV60 is really impressive. I mean, it gives you more power once again, pretty similar as far as the range goes. But the thing about the GV60 is it comes fully loaded, basically. So there's not a million option boxes to tick or, hunt down exact configuration. It's pretty easy to, get basically everything, because they all just come with it. So they all come with all the features and options you'd expect, the heated and cooled seats, heated steering wheel, all that kind of stuff it has. And they're really impressive. They drive really nicely. They still have a lot of space inside. And those with all-wheel drive, because again, they come standard with that as well, are about $59,000. And to get a comparable EQB that has all the stuff that you get in the GV60, you're going to be looking at least probably $65,000, $66,000 for an EQB, even an EQB 250, to get all the comparable stuff. But even if you're going up to an EQB 300 or something like that, I mean, it's going to be way more expensive. For the Genesis, if you actually do want a fully loaded luxury vehicle with all the luxury features you're expecting, the GV60 is hands down a much better value, in my opinion, and seems to be the clear winner as far as what you get for your money. I think the Genesis is the big winner there. The other competitors to mention, though, there is also the Audi Q4 e-tron, and that one, the difference is with that, for its base trim, it's rear-wheel drive instead of front-wheel drive. So if you are someone trying to get by with just two-wheel drive in the wintertime, it's probably a little easier to handle front-wheel drive than rear-wheel drive. So I would just put that out there as far as the Q4. But otherwise, that also does charge faster. I believe it's 150 kilowatt charging in that. And otherwise, pretty similar as far as pricing and range. And another one that is also a very strong competitor is the Tesla Model Y, which is the only other one that can really match the EQB's one little party trick of having an optional third row. I mean, this vehicle is not large, though, so the third row in this isn't going to be very usable. But if that little feature does appeal to you, then just know the Tesla Model Y does match you. You can have a 7-seat configuration integration in that as well. And with that, I mean, the Model Y, it's hard to say because pricing seems to change on those every single week, basically. But as of the time of filming this, you can get a Model Y that has almost 100 more miles of range, charges way faster on the supercharger network and all that. And those are about $55,000. And that also does throw in some things like the heated seats that you don't get here in this. And so that also is another one that undercuts this. And also, it also has way more power, so it's way faster in addition to the extra range. A much more compelling bargain, once again, than this is. So as you're seeing, the theme here is that the EQB in a vacuum is a nice little electric crossover, but they just price it too high, unfortunately. And the thing too is the Tesla potentially, it's very, you know, back and forth with all these tax laws and rules, but as of the time of filming this, the Tesla is also eligible for the tax credit, which the EQB is not eligible for. So another, you know, feather in the cap of the Tesla compared to this, and is going to be one of the reasons why I think the EQB isn't going to be, you know, a runaway sales hit like you've seen from the Model Y and others. And the other one that I have to mention as well is actually Mercedes' own GLB. And I'm just bringing that up because obviously if you're interested in the EQB, I'm guessing you're interested in the electric thing, but how badly do you actually want the electric thing? Because a comparable GLB, which isn't really much slower, has, you know, same power from its base engine basically, and it does have less torque. This has more torque, but aside from that, you know, pretty similar as far as power goes. And the regular GLB, I mean, you can get one of those with the same options this one has. Again, this is about $57,000. You can get a comparably optioned GLB for about $43,000. So I mean, you are talking, you know, probably $12,000 or $13,000 for the premium of having, you know, the electric thing. Nothing against electric vehicles, but you know, it's really going to be tough to justify this over a regular GLB for the average Mercedes shopper that just wants a nice little boxy crossover to do the running around in. You know, again, it's just really priced way too high to even, I think, draw in a normal GLB customer, just because the GLB is just such a better bargain as far as the luxury crossovers goes. So that's, honestly, I think that's the biggest competitor for the EQB is its, you know, the GLB, ironically enough. And I think that's going to be the one hindrance of the EQB sales, in my opinion, potentially. In a vacuum, like I said, it's a great little vehicle. I like it a lot. If, you know, you're only interested in the EQB and you're not cross shopping, it's a great little vehicle still, nonetheless. But to me, it's just not the best value out there, not the most compelling option out there, but still a nice little vehicle nonetheless. But anyway, that's all of my thoughts here on the EQB 250. Let me know your thoughts on it in the comments below. Be sure to, again, go watch our interior review if you want to hear all the details on this interior. Huge thanks to Mercedes for providing me here with this EQB to review for you guys today. Please also leave a like and subscribe to keep these videos coming. And I'll see you guys in the next one. Thanks for watching. Take care.